and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, and Lauren and the Books. Now, today is the 1st of March. It's the most wonderful time of the reading year, but I'm not feeling my most wonderful today. I've just come on my period and I'm feeling really flat, miserable, and I'm in quite a lot of pain. So please don't let my misery hold back on how excited I am about this month. I will tell you how excited I am about this month. So March, every year, it's my favourite reading month of the year. I always kick off March with the Irish Readathon, which is a readathon I've taken part in since its invention, run by Aoife and Leanne. I will link their channels down below. And this year they've done it again and provided me with me and everyone else taking part with an amazing selection of prompts for books to read for the Irish Readathon. I'll be going through those shortly. And then on the 7th of March, so pretty quick in, the Women's Prize long list is announced. The Women's Prize for Fiction is the only literary prize I tend to show any interest in, and the long list is announced every year on International Women's Day. And it's normally 16 books, so I'm expecting there to be 16 books, and I try my hardest to read as many of those 16 books I can by the time the shortlist is announced, which is in April sometimes. I think you get about 5 or 6 weeks to read the 16 books. Normally I've read a few of them, not always, and I always do a little predictions video, which will be going up on the Sunday before the 5th, I think that'll be, and then I'll be doing a live show on the evening of the 7th. Depending on whether or not they're announcing it then and there. I mean, I always try, so sometimes they would announce it like midnight, so I've stayed up before till midnight and done it, which has been lovely. Sometimes they've done it at 9 o'clock in the morning, in which case if I've been at work, I've avoided it all day and then done a live reaction in the evening. And sometimes they've done it like 7 o'clock in the evening. So once I get times and times for that, I will let you know when that live show is going to go ahead. Keep an eye on my Instagram. So yeah, and then there's just a few other books that I'll be reading this month for book clubs and from when I've done my first line battles and things like that. But let's start with the Irish Readathon books, because that's certainly what I'll be starting with. So, as I said, Aoife and Leanne have come up with some amazing prompts. They've given 1, 2, 3, 4 prompts plus a group read, and then they've got this sort of prompt, well, a selection of buzzwords which people who take part in the Irish Readathon came up with, words that they associated with Aoife and Leanne's challenge, with Irish writers, etc, etc. You can just read books based on those buzzwords, but I've picked a book for each of those buzzwords. Whether or not I get around to reading them, as I said, March is a really, really big month, but some exciting books nevertheless. So let's start. So the first prompt, and the prompt that they use every single year, is that a book with green on the cover. So it doesn't have to be by an Irish author or anything to do with Ireland, just if you're reading a book with green on the cover, you are taking part in the Irish Readathon. I'm reading a book with green on the cover, and it's by an Irish author. This is Solace by Belinda McEwen. I feel like you're really, really far away. Do you want to come in a little bit? Then we can actually see the book covers, can't we? That's a bit better. You can see my miserable face. So, Solace by Belinda McEwen. I read Tender by Belinda McEwen last year, and it was one of my favourite books of last year. Absolutely loved it. This one, Irish Book of the Year in 2011, so very excited about this. This is following Mark Casey, who did not expect to fall in love, but from the minute he saw Joanne Lynch across the garden of a Dublin pub, it seemed that nothing else was possible. But Mark is also drawn back guiltily to his family and the land they have farmed for generations. When he discovers the truth behind a family feud, it threatens to destroy the passionate love affair. So like I said, I read Tender and absolutely loved it. I thought it was an amazing feat of literature anyway. It's written, like, each part was really written in a different style. But something else I really loved about it is that I've got sort of friends in Ireland, and whenever I go to Ireland, I normally go to Longford in Ireland, and you don't hear much about Longford, but Tender is set between Longford and Dublin, and I wonder if Belinda, I think Belinda's from Longford, and if this book might be between that as well. Between Longford and there, but yeah, I can't read because it's got a big sticker over it. So there we go, there's the first book, green on the cover. Where am I going to put these? We'll put them down here. Next up is a children's book. Now this has worked out very well because for my Patreon book club, we always read an Irish author for March Patreon book club, because I always take part in the Irish Readathon, and this year I thought, well, let's go a bit nicher, and we decided to read some Irish YA. So the book that won was A Million to One by Adiba Jagirda, who is an Irish YA author. I've read her 2 other books. She's got another book out this year. I think this only just came out. She's got another book out. I've read Honey and Issues, Guide to Fake Dating, and The Henna Wars, and this is A Million to One, which is about 4 girls on the Titanic who were there to try and steal a book called the Rubaiyat. It's a one-of-a-kind book worth millions, and Josepha is the person at the head of this group who's trying to get this stolen, and she's accompanied by Hinna, Violet and Emily. It says careless mistakes, old grudges and new romances threaten to jeopardise everything they've worked for, and then tragedy strikes. What are their chances of success? 1,000,000 to 1. So yeah, looking forward to reading this and discussing it at the end of the month in book club, as I always am. The next book, oh, I need my phone for this. 1 minute. Next prompt is commercial fiction, and you'll know that I'm a lover of both Maeve Binchy and Marion Keyes, both of whom are considered to be commercial fiction. Now, I haven't read a Maeve Binchy book in bloody ages, so I thought I'll read a Maeve Binchy book. It'll be very, very nice, and I always find them very warm. Warm is a prompt later on, but I do have a different book for that. And just sort of comforting and lovely stories and all sorts. So I'm going to be reading Chestnut Street, listening to the audio book of Chestnut Street. It's 12.5 hours long. They're normally quite big, the old Maeve Binchy books, and they're normally quite formulaic, and I don't mean that in a shady way, I mean that in a sort of like comforting and lovely way. And I'm looking forward to getting into a bit more Maeve Binchy. So let's have a look and see what this one's actually about. Just around the corner from St Giles Crescent is Chestnut Street. Here the lives of the residents are revealed in Maeve Binchy's wonderfully compelling tales. Bucket Maguire, the window cleaner, must do more than he bargained for to protect his son. Nessa Byrne, whose aunt came over from America for 6 weeks every summer. Lillian, the generous girl with a big heart, and the fiancé not everyone approves of. And Melly, whose gossip about the neighbours leads to trouble. So I don't know if that's a sort of collection of short stories about everyone living in Chestnut Street, because I know Maeve Binchy does a lot of those. So yeah, I've picked that for commercial fiction. I also do have Making It Up As I Go Along by Marion Keyes, which, as I said, Marion Keyes is a commercial fiction author. This is a non-fiction book about her writing. A bold and brilliant collection of Marion's hilarious and often heartfelt observations on modern life, love and everything in between. So yeah, so I may well get to that as well. So although that's not fiction, that's by a commercial fiction author. Next up, I've bent this one a little bit because you had to read a very long book over 500 pages or a very short book less than 100 pages, and I struggled to find either of those things. So what I've just done is I've got loads of Irish books out from the library and pulled them all off my shelves, and I found the longest one that I owned. So although it doesn't hit the prompt, I'm gonna let myself off because this is 441 pages long, and that's The Saint of Lost Things by Tish Delaney. I've got this out from the library a few times. I really like the front cover, and I've never got around to reading it. So it says here, there was a time when Lindy Morris escaped to London and walked along the Thames in the moonlight when life was full and exciting. Decades later, Lindy lives back with her Auntie Belle on the edge of Donegal and on the edge of Grandar Morris's land. Grandar Morris is a complicated man, a farmer who wanted sons but got 2 daughters, Auntie Belle and Lindy's mother, who disappeared long ago. Now Lindy and Belle live in the smallest of lives in a cottage full of unfulfilled dreams. But when the secrets they have kept for 30 years emerge, everything is rewritten. Will Lindy grasp who she is again? So yeah, I think that sounds great. And again, I can't get over this lovely front cover of these sort of like dying flowers in a pot. Just very sort of like a romantic painting or something. Lovely. And then, oh yeah, then we've got the group read. I should have done the group read first, really. Then we've got the group read, which is None of This Is Serious by Catherine Prasivka. Excited to read this. Have got out, never taken part in the group read before. Started reading the group read last year and don't think I got very far with it. So this is about Dublin student life. It's ending for Sophie and her friends. They've got everything figured out and Sophie feels left behind as they all start to go their separate ways. She's overshadowed by her best friend Grace. She's been in love with Finn for as long as she's known him, and she's about to meet Rory, who's suddenly available to her online. At a party, what was already unstable completely falls apart, and Sophie finds herself obsessively scrolling social media, waiting for anything to happen. None of This Is Serious is about the uncertainty and absurdity of being alive today. It's about balancing the real world with the online and the vulnerabilities in yourself, your relationships, your body. At its heart, this is a novel about friendship strong enough to withstand anything. Now we're on to the buzzwords. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 buzzwords. And as I said, Aoife and Leanne are very like, just join in as much or as little as you want, and I've picked a book that I associate with each of these buzzwords, but who knows how many of these I'll be getting through to getting round to. But the buzzwords are pride, home, language, spring, knowledge, friendship, dogs, feminism, and warmth. And I've picked one for each. The first one is pride, and I've taken, you can take the word pride and you can take many of these words in different ways. I've taken it as sort of LGBTQ plus pride, and I'm going to listen to the audiobook, hopefully, of Kissing the Witch by Emma Donoghue. This is a book of Emma Donoghue's that I've meant to read for a really long time. It's been sort of like, I remember it bouncing around on BookTube in my early days of BookTube. It's a collection of fairy tales retold with sort of queer retellings of these fairy tales, and from what if I remember rightly, so the first fairy tale that you're hearing, then something in that appears in the next one, and the next one, something in that appears in the next one. So they're all sort of like slightly interlinked, almost like a set of Matryoshka dolls. Is that what they call Matryoshka dolls? Where like something else is linked into that. And yeah, I'm not a big short story lover, but I do like that when that happens. So just like a slight link to the one before. So that's what I'm reading for pride. And then we've got home. Oh, then we've got home. And I've got, talking about how much I don't like short stories, a short story collection called Homesickness by Colin Barrett. And this is a collection of short stories by Colin about being homesick and about sort of living in Ireland and living elsewhere in the world. It says here, in these 8 stories, Colin Barrett takes us back to the barren backwaters of County Mayo via Canada and illuminates the lives of outcast misfits and malcontents with an eye for the abrupt and absurd. A quiet night in the neighbourhood pub is shattered by the arrival of a sword-wielding fugitive. A funeral party teeters on the edge of this world and the next as ghosts won't settle. A shooting sees an everyday call-out lead a policewoman to confront the banality of her own existence. So yeah, there we go. Debut collection as well. And then the next buzzword is language, and I've gone for Poetry Unbound, which is a collection of poems, but curated by Padraig Ó Tuama, I think that's how we say it. And it says 50 poems to open your world. Now, when I hauled this book, I got this as part of a Christmas package from Headline Books, which was lovely. But when I hauled it, so many people said, oh, you absolutely must listen to the podcast of this because apparently it's amazing. Now, I'm getting much more into poetry, and I think that's a lot to thank Holly McNish's collection that I read at the beginning of last year and actually was my favourite book of last year, whereby there's a poem and then there's a passage of writing about that poem, or vice versa, there's a passage of writing and then there's poems that fit in with that passage of writing. And this looks as though that follows a lot of here. So there's sort of like poems about, well, I'm just having a look. Whereas My Eyes Land on the Shoreline by Layli Long Soldier, and then a little bit about that poem afterwards and how it was the book that this poem comes from, whereas is a response to an apology given by Barack Obama in 2009 while he was the US president. So yeah, there's a lot of context, and context is what I like when I'm reading poetry. So yeah, and I definitely will listen to some of the podcast of this as well. Did I say that was for the prompt language? Because that is for the prompt language, because poems are language. I mean, I suppose I could have picked any of these books for language, yeah, couldn't I? But yeah, there we go. So I picked that. The next prompt is spring. This is another book that I've had for a really long time. And well, actually, I thought about buying this a number of times when I've been like in bookshops, and then I found it for like 50p in a charity shop. So it's The Diary of a Young Naturalist by Dara McNulty. And this is a debut, a non-fiction debut from Dara's eyes. He's an autistic teenager coping with the uprooting of homeschool and his mental health while pursuing his life and conservationist and environmental activist. So why I picked this for spring is that it starts in spring, guys. So it's all about sort of like nature. But look, it starts in spring. So I thought this would fit that really well. It's also got a quote from Chris Packham on the front. Really, really special. And I love Chris Packham. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. This is something that I've been wanting to read for a long time. So excited about that. And then we've got knowledge. And I've taken this because of the title is very much like, I link it, the word knowledge, to the title. So although I don't know how much I'm going to learn from this, it's not a non-fiction book, it's another short story collection. I think it's got a great title that links in with knowledge, and that is How to Gut a Fish, and I think the term how to sort of relates with knowledge. And this is by Sheila Armstrong, and it says here, on a boat offshore, a fisherman guts a mackerel as he anxiously awaits a midnight rendezvous. Villagers one by one disappear into a sinkhole beneath a yew tree. A nameless girl is taped, bound and put on display in a countryside market. A man returning home following the death of his mother finds something disturbing among her personal effects. This is a dazzling and disquieting collection of stories. Places the bizarre beside the everyday and then elegantly and expertly blurs the lines. An exciting new Irish writer whose sharp and lyrical prose unsettles and astounds in equal measure. So yeah, that's that for knowledge. Now I've got 2 for friendship. So as if I didn't have enough going on anyway, I picked 2 for friendship. And that's mainly because will I ever get round to reading Beautiful World, Where Are You? by Sally Rooney. Really love Normal People. Conversations with Friends, less into, but love the sort of hype around Normal People as well, and the series that followed it and all of that sort of stuff. And I've read it, reread it a number of times. I just don't know why I haven't read this. This came out, this was such a big deal like 2 years ago in September 2021. I remember like people queuing at bookshops to get their hands on it, and this is a proof copy, so I was fortunate enough to get this before it even came out. I still haven't bloody read it. And it links in with friendship because it's about a set of 4 friends, Alice, Felix, Eileen and Simon. It says they're still young but life is catching up with them. They desire each other, they delude each other, they get together, they break apart. They worry about sex and friendship and the world they live in. Are they standing in the last lighted room before the darkness bearing witness to something? Will they find a way to believe in a beautiful world? So yeah. Will I get round to reading it? Who knows? Who knows? And then the one that I picked, because I also really want to read this, is The Night Ship by Jess Kidd. And this is set over 2 time periods. In 1628, we're following a young girl, Macon, who boards a ship called the Batavia, which is the most impressive sea vessel of the age. And during the long voyage, the curious and resourceful child must find her place in the busy ship, and she soon uncovers shadowy secrets above and below deck. And then we're also looking in 1989. Gil, who is a boy mourning the death of his mother, is placed in the care of his irritable and reclusive grandfather. Their home is a shack on a tiny fishing island off the Australian coast, notable only for its reef and wrecked boats. This is no place for a child's struggle with the dark past, and Gil's actions soon get him noticed by the wrong people. So it doesn't sound like it's much about friendship, but the last bit says, The Night Ship is an enthralling tale of survival, friendship, and of 2 children, hundreds of years apart, whose fate becomes inextricably bound together. I saw this was on Between the Covers, and everyone that read it, although you don't often see on that show people not liking the books that they're reading, but everyone really loved it, and Jessie Cave was one of the people who was reading it, and I enjoyed hearing her talk about it. Was it that book she was talking about? I'm sure it was. And then we've got, okay, so those were the 2 for friendship. Then we've got dogs. Now, I'm not a big, I feel a bit bad admitting this, but I love to see a dog, but I'm not a big dog person. Like, I don't dislike dogs, but I'm just not a big dog person, so big dog. So I sort of thought, well, how am I going to find a book about dogs? But Aoife, when I watched her video of what book she was reading, she mentioned that this book, 7 Steeples, has a dog in it. So this will definitely fit the brief. I really love this front cover, and I love how small this little book is. It's very, very cute. It's by an Irish press called Tramp Press. And my library had it, my local library had it, so I was very, very excited. By Sarah Bourne, who also wrote a book called A Line Made by Walking, which was a big book on BookTube a few years ago. But this is about Belle and Si, who are a couple in the infancy of their relationship, and they cut themselves off from their family and friends. Them in and the world out. From the top of the nearby mountains, they are told you can see 7 standing stones, 7 schools and 7 steeples. All you have to do is climb. So this takes part in a remote house on the southwest of Ireland, and this rich and vivid novel spans 7 years and speaks to the times we live in, asking how better to live in the natural world and how the choices we make lead us home. I think it sounds great. I'm really looking forward to reading it. So that's for that. And then for feminism, I'm going to listen to the audiobook, which is a reread for me, of Asking For It by Louise O'Neill. Louise O'Neill's writing in general, she's an amazing Irish author. She writes very good sort of texts, young adult books, novels with feminism sort of at its core. And if I knew more about her more recent book, Idol, I don't think that sounds as though it's got sort of feminism at its core, but Asking For It does. And I've read it but never listened to the audiobook, so I'm going to listen to the audiobook of it, and it's about a young girl who is a bit of a bitch. She's not particularly pleasant to her friends and things like that, and one night she goes out and has something to drink and gets raped by multiple males from their local school. It's filmed and she's sort of left unceremoniously on her doorstep. And the title, Asking For It, refers to the question that the thing that's said about women whenever that sexual assault has happened, like what was that person wearing, how much of that person had to drink, and whether or not that person was asking for it. And this was written quite some time ago, and I remember reading it and being sort of like really impressed by it, and I wonder how I will feel on a revisit of it, so I will be listening to that. Then Warmth, the last prompt, I've gone for the same book that Aoife mentioned, which is Leonard and Hungry Paul. Somebody I know read this last year and absolutely loved it, so it's their favourite book. So I got it out from the library last year, looked at it and thought, nah. I think this might be published by Tramp Press as well. I'm going to read that. I'm going to save that for the Irish Readathon. So yeah, it's at the library waiting for me to collect it, so that's why I haven't got it here, but I will be reading that. And then, as I said, we've got the group read, which was there. And then the 3 other books that I've got to read. My God, this is going to be a big month of reading, isn't it? So you would have seen that during the I do something now called first line battles, which I'm really enjoying doing. I've done well, 2 of them because I picked January. Oh no, so yeah, 2 of them, because then I pick the book for the next month. So whereby I pick by colour, I go and pick like the first red book, the first orange book, the first yellow book, and I read their first lines and I battle them against each other. And the book that won to add, and the prize is, if they win, is that they will be added to my TBR for the next month. And the book that won in I'm actually looking at this now and I can't believe it. The book that won in February, which prize was to be added to my March TBR, was A Restless Truth by Freya Marske. Now, one of the rules I have is that I won't include books that because it's about reading books on these shelves. So books that I've read before, I'm not including, and books that are sequels, I'm not including. So here it says, and I didn't realise this when I was doing it, the dazzling sequel to A Marvellous Light. So this is the book that won, because the first line was great. I mean, let me read it to you. I really enjoyed the first line. Elizabeth Navenby was known for 3 things: needlework, talking to the dead, and an ill temper at the best of times. I think that's a great first line. Of course it won. I didn't notice that, and it was only when people were commenting underneath saying, oh, I think that might be a sequel, that I was like, oh yeah, maybe it is. Anyway, I've got the first book out from the library, because I didn't own the first book, called A Marvellous Light by Freya Marske. And we'll read this with every hope to sort of get to this in March, because that was the plan. I can't believe I didn't see that on there. And I did it. So yeah, so I've got the first 2 books in this series. I might read this and not enjoy it and therefore think, no, I'm not actually going to bother that, even though it won. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's some additional stuff to add. March is going to be a massive reading month. I'm going to be a busy, busy girl. I've actually got a week off in March as well, so that'll be good. I'll just do loads of reading. And then the last book is the book that I'm reading for my book club with my pals. This was somebody else's choice. I know nothing of this. Well, I knew nothing of this. It's The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. And then when I was watching Lena's Best Books of the Year, she mentioned this author and her other book, and said that that was she could have picked either of these books to be her one of her favourite books this year. So I'm very much looking forward to reading it. Let's have a look. Every story opens a door. In a sprawling mansion filled with peculiar treasures, January Schaller is a curiosity herself. As the ward of the wealthy Mr. Locke, she feels little different from the artefacts that decorate the halls, carefully maintained, largely ignored and utterly out of place. But her quiet existence is shattered when she stumbles across a strange book, a book that carries the scent of other worlds and tells a tale of secret doors, of love, adventure and danger. Each page reveals a more impossible truths about the world, and January discovers a story increasingly entwined with her own. So yeah, I mean, that doesn't normally sound like something I'd be into, but like I said, it's a book club book, and I always value the opportunity to read something that I particularly maybe wouldn't be into and see how I get on with it. So those are the books that I'm planning to read in the month of March. Lots, isn't there? Not even mentioning the 16 books that are going to be on the Women's Prize for Fiction long list. I mean, hopefully I've read a few of those, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, hopefully, I say hopefully I've read a few of those. It's always really nice when there's like 16 books to read that I've not read before, and like some of them not even heard of, so excited about that. Let me know if you're taking part in the Irish Readathon. Let me know if you've read any of these books here. Let me know if you're looking forward to the Women's Prize for Fiction longlist, and I'll see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Gonna go lay down now. Bye!